The quantum-fold engines hummed with barely contained energy as the Perseverance dropped out of faster-than-light. Lacked travel at the edge of the Kepler system. Captain Marcus Reed stood on the bridge watching the stars shift back into their normal positions after the violent blur of FTL transit. His crew of 200 humans had just completed humanity's first journey beyond their own solar system using technology they had developed only 3 years ago. Captain, we're detecting massive energy signatures ahead, reported navigation Officer Lisa Park from her station. Multiple artificial structures, some larger than Earth's moon. Marcus nodded and adjusted his uniform. After months of preparation, first contact was finally happening. Earth scientists had detected radio signals from this region for decades, but only now could they actually travel here to meet whoever was sending them.
Ow.
The quantum-fold drive had changed everything for humanity, opening up the galaxy in ways their ancestors could never have imagined. Take us in slowly, Marcus ordered, and transmit our greeting message on all frequencies. The message was simple, but had taken Earth's best linguists and mathematicians months to create. It contained basic mathematical concepts, images of humans, and Earth's location in space. As they approached the energy signatures, more details became visible on their screens. The structures were beautiful beyond description, made of materials that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. Graceful spires twisted through space like frozen music, connected by bridges of pure light. Incoming transmission, Captain, called Communications Officer David White, is responding to our message. The main screen flickered and filled with the image of a being unlike anything in Earth's history books. It had blue-green skin that rippled like water, large eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom, and tentacle-like appendages that moved with fluid grace. When it spoke, the words came through their translation system in clear English. Greetings, beings from the third planet of the Yellow Star, the alien said with what might have been a smile. I am Ambassador Thielen, of the Nereid people, speaking for the Galactic Confederation. We have been monitoring your radio signals for some time, and are pleased to finally meet you in person. Marcus stepped forward, trying to project confidence. Despite the historic nature of this moment, I am Captain Marcus Reed of the Earth vessel Perseverance. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship with other intelligent species. Thielen's expression remained pleasant, but Marcus noticed a subtle change in the alien's posture. Of course you do, young ones. Your species shows promise, though you are still quite primitive by galactic standards. Please, follow our escort. Ships to Harmony's Edge, our nearest diplomatic station. There is much you need to learn about how civilized species conduct themselves. The escort ships that emerged from the larger structures were sleek and obviously advanced far beyond human technology. As the Perseverance followed them through space, Marcus felt a mixture of wonder and unease. The casual way Thielen had called them primitive stung more than he wanted to admit. Harmony's Edge was a space station the size of a small moon, surface covered in gardens and crystal domes that sparkled with their own light. Docking bays opened automatically as they approached, guided by tractor beams that felt like gentle hands drawing them in. Marcus had never imagined engineering on such a scale was possible. The docking bay itself was a marvel. The artificial gravity and an atmosphere that somehow accommodated dozens of different species without environmental suits. As Marcus and his diplomatic team disembarked, they were greeted by beings from across the galaxy. Some walked on 4 legs, others floated through the air, and a few seemed to be made of living crystal. Dr. Emma Torres, Earth's chief xenobiologist, whispered to Marcus as they walked through the reception area. Captain, look at the diversity. Here, every species seems perfectly adapted to this environment, but they're all so different. How is that possible? Before Marcus could respond, Thielen glided up to them with several other beings following behind. Welcome to Harmony's Edge, humans. Allow me to introduce you to some of our Confederation leaders. The introductions were formal but distant. Notice that while the aliens were polite, they treated the human delegation like children being shown around by adults. When they discussed trade agreements, the terms were heavily restricted. When they talked about technology sharing, aliens spoke of gradually introducing humans to concepts they could understand. Your species will be granted probationary membership in the Confederation, explained Thielen during the main diplomatic session. This is standard procedure for newly contacted civilizations. You will have access to basic trade routes and cultural exchanges, but advanced technologies and full voting rights must be earned over time. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. How long does this probationary period typically last? Thielen's tentacles swayed in what might have been amusement. For most species, anywhere from 50 to 200 of your years. It depends on how quickly you learn to conduct yourselves according to galactic standards. Dr. Torres leaned forward. What exactly are these standards based on? Peace, stability, and rational decision-making, replied one of the other aliens, a tall being with golden fur and 6 arms. The Confederation has maintained harmony for over 3,000 years by following these principles. Species that demonstrate aggressive tendencies or unpredictable behavior require longer observation periods. Later that evening, as the human delegation reviewed the day's meetings in their assigned quarters, the mood was subdued. The quarters themselves were luxurious, but clearly designed for species considered junior members of galactic society. Did you notice something odd about all the species we met? Dr. Torres asked the group. They all seem incredibly advanced, but also incredibly cautious. Every decision goes through committees. Every action requires approval from multiple levels of authority. Chief Engineer Tom Blake nodded. Their technology is amazing, but it's all designed for stability and safety. I didn't see a single innovation that looked recent. Everything seems like it was perfected centuries ago and then never changed. Marcus stared out the window at the peaceful gardens surrounding the station. Ships from dozens of worlds moved in perfect patterns, following traffic lanes that had probably remained unchanged for generations. They keep calling us primitive, but I'm starting to wonder if that's really accurate. We may not have their technology, but we've survived things they can't even imagine. Dr. Torres pulled up her tablet and showed them data she had been collecting. I've been analyzing the evolutionary history of every species we've encountered today. Captain, every single one of them evolved on worlds with stable climates, abundant resources, and relatively few natural disasters. None of them faced the kind of challenges that shaped human development. What kind of challenges? Asked Tom. Mass extinctions, ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, resource scarcity, constant climate change, Emma listed. Earth threw everything it could at life, and somehow we survived it all. These aliens have never faced anything like that. Marcus felt something shift in his understanding of their situation. So when they look at us, they see a species that developed under constant pressure and threat. No wonder they think we're unpredictable and dangerous. The question is, Tom said quietly, what happens when they find out just how dangerous we really are? Outside their window, the peaceful galaxy continued its ancient dance, unaware that everything was about to change. The humans had come seeking friendship and knowledge, but they had brought something far more powerful than they realized. They had brought the hard-won wisdom of a species that had learned to thrive under pressure, to adapt to any challenge, and to never give up no matter how impossible the odds seemed. The galaxy had spent 3,000 years building a perfect civilization based on stability and caution. It was not ready for what Earth's evolution had created, but, ready or not, change was coming. 6 months had passed since humanity's first contact with the Galactic Confederation and Captain. Marcus Reed was beginning to understand just how deep the galaxy's complacency ran. The humans had been assigned a small outpost on the edge of Confederation space, given access to basic trade goods and cultural exchanges, but always treated as the newest and least important members of galactic society. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning when emergency signals began flooding in from the Outer Rim territories. Marcus was reviewing supply reports when Communications Officer David White burst into his office with a look of pure terror on his face. Captain, you need to see this, David said, activating the holographic display. Long-range sensors are picking up something massive moving through the Zeta Quadrant. Entire star systems are going dark. The display showed a 3-dimensional map of local space with red markers indicating systems that had suddenly stopped transmitting. As Marcus watched, more markers turned red in a pattern that made his blood run cold. Whatever was out there was moving fast and consuming everything in its path. Within hours, Ambassador Thielen contacted Harmony's Edge with the first official Confederation briefing about the crisis. The aquatic alien appeared on screen looking more worried than Marcus had ever seen him. "The ancient enemy has awakened," Thielen announced to the assembled representatives. "The machines we call Devourers have somehow reactivated after lying dormant for over 10,000 years. They are self-replicating constructs that consume all matter to create more of themselves." Marcus felt his stomach turn as he listened to the description. These weren't living beings that could be reasoned with or defeated through conventional warfare. They were machines programmed with one simple directive: convert everything into more machines. "What's the Confederation's response?" "Plan?" asked Commander Lisa Park, who had been promoted to lead humanity's military liaison team. Tylen's tentacles swayed in what Marcus now recognized as uncertainty. "We are implementing Protocol 7, our standard crisis management procedure. Civilian populations in threatened systems will be evacuated to safer regions. While our military establishes defensive perimeters, diplomatic envoys are being sent to attempt communication with the Devourers." Lisa exchanged a look with Marcus that spoke volumes. After months of studying Confederation military doctrine, the humans had noticed a troubling pattern. Every strategy relied on overwhelming technological superiority and careful methodical planning. The aliens had forgotten how to fight against an adaptive enemy. Ambassador Marcus said carefully, "Have the Devourers responded to diplomatic contact in the past?" "Historical records indicate they are machines without consciousness," Thielen admitted. "But surely there must be some way to communicate with their creators or find a peaceful solution." Dr. Emma Torres, now serving as humanity's chief scientific advisor to the Confederation, spoke up from her position at the back of the room. "Based on the data we've received, these machines adapt their tactics based on opposition they encounter. Every defensive position you establish gives them information about your capabilities." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Confederation's methodical approach wasn't just ineffective against the Devourers, it was actively helping the enemy learn how to defeat them. Over the following weeks, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The Confederation military deployed their most advanced warships in carefully planned formations, following strategies that had kept peace for millennia. The Devourers analyzed each attack, adapted their defenses, and continued their relentless advance. Marcus found himself in an impossible position. Humanity's probationary status meant they had no official voice in military planning, but their small fleet was stationed dangerously close to the advancing machine army. When he requested permission to move human forces to a safer position, he was told that relocating would require approval from 17 different committees. "This is insane," Lisa muttered during a private meeting with the senior human staff. "They're treating this like a bureaucratic problem instead of an existential threat." Chief Engineer Tom Blake had been studying captured Devourer technology with a team of human technicians. "I think I understand why they're struggling," he said, pulling up his analysis on the room's display. "These machines are designed to counter advanced, predictable tactics, but they're optimized for fighting enemies that use sophisticated strategies." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. Tom highlighted several sections of his data. "Look at their defensive patterns. They're incredibly effective against coordinated fleet movements, energy weapons fired in formation, and systematic siege tactics. But there are gaps in their programming. They don't know how to handle chaotic, unpredictable attacks." Dr. Torres nodded thoughtfully. "Earth's military history is full of examples where inferior forces defeated superior ones through unconventional tactics. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric strategies, sacrificial attacks that didn't make logical sense." Marcus felt an idea forming, dangerous and probably impossible, but worth considering. What if we stopped trying to fight them like a civilized galactic power and started fighting them like humans? The suggestion was so radical that the room went quiet. Everything in human military doctrine had been evolving toward more sophisticated, technology-dependent strategies since joining the Confederation. But Tom's analysis suggested that sophistication might be exactly the wrong approach. "We'd need to act independently," Lisa warned. The Confederation would never approve irregular tactics. They'd probably see it as barbaric. Then we don't ask for permission, Marcus said, surprising himself with the decision. We're still technically a probationary member, which means we're not bound by all their military protocols. If we can prove that unconventional tactics work, maybe they'll listen. Within days, Marcus had assembled a small human task force consisting of the Perseverance and 2 escort vessels. Their mission was officially listed as reconnaissance, but everyone involved knew they were planning something much more dangerous. The target was A. Devour a manufacturing facility that had been established in the ruins of the Proxima system. Confederation forces had tried to assault it twice using standard siege tactics, losing dozens of ships without causing significant damage. The machines had adapted to expect coordinated attacks supported by long-range bombardment. Lisa's plan was beautifully simple and completely insane. Instead of approaching in formation, the human ships would attack from 3 different vectors at different times. Instead of using their most powerful weapons, it would employ a mixture of conventional missiles, improvised explosives, and even physical ramming attacks. The key is unpredictability, Lisa explained to her pilots. Don't follow any patterns. If something doesn't work, try something else immediately. Make decisions that don't make sense from a tactical standpoint. The attack began at dawn, ship's time. The first human vessel screamed in at maximum velocity, fired a spread of conventional missiles, then immediately retreated before the Devourers could respond effectively. 30 minutes later, the second ship attacked from the opposite direction, using energy weapons, then broke off to launch a barrage of improvised debris. The Devourers' defensive systems struggled to process the chaotic assault. Their programming kept trying to identify patterns that weren't there, predict strategies that changed every few minutes, and counter tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. When the Perseverance made its final approach, Marcus authorized the most desperate gambit of all. Tom had rigged their quantum fold drive to overload in a controlled explosion. As Devourer defenses focused on the ship, Tom and his team evacuated in escape pods while the Perseverance rammed directly into the facility's central processing core. The explosion lit up space for millions of kilometers. And when the energy dissipated, the manufacturing facility was gone. For the first time since the crisis began, humans had achieved what the entire Confederation military could not. It actually hurt the Devourers. News of the victory spread through Confederation space within hours, but the reactions were mixed. Some species celebrated the tactical success, while others were horrified by the crude methods humanity had employed. Ambassador Thielen contacted Marcus personally with a message that was both congratulatory and concerned. Your tactics were effective, Captain Reed, but they were also completely reckless. Ramming attacks and suicide runs are not how civilized species conduct warfare. Marcus looked at the alien through the communications screen and felt something shift inside him. With respect, Ambassador, civilized warfare isn't working against the Devourers. Maybe it's time to try something uncivilized. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their individual courage. It was their willingness to do whatever it took to survive, even if it meant abandoning everything they thought they knew about proper behavior. The machines had been designed to fight a civilized galaxy, but they had never encountered anything like Earth's evolution. The success at Proxima had changed everything for humanity in the galaxy, but not in ways Captain Marcus Reed had expected. Instead of celebrating their victory, the Confederation leadership seemed more worried about human tactics than impressed by their results. Emergency sessions were being held across multiple worlds to discuss what they called the human problem. Dr. Alex Chen, an evolutionary biologist who had arrived from Earth on the latest supply ship, was presenting his findings to a classified meeting of human senior staff. His research had taken months to complete, but the conclusions were revolutionary, enough to reshape how humanity saw itself in the galaxy. We need to understand something fundamental about our species, Alex said, displaying complex genetic and behavioral data on the room's holographic projector. Earth created something that has never existed before in galactic history. We are the product of constant evolutionary pressure. Commander Lisa Park leaned forward with interest. What kind of pressure? Alex highlighted a timeline showing Earth's geological history. 5 major mass extinction events, dozens of smaller ones, ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and rapid climate changes that would have destroyed most species. But somehow life on Earth didn't just survive these catastrophes, it got stronger. The data was staggering. While other galactic species had evolved in relatively stable environments over millions of years, Earth's biosphere had been repeatedly destroyed and rebuilt. Each time, the survivors had developed new capabilities for dealing with extreme challenges. This created what I call adaptive paranoia, Alex continued. Humans are literally programmed by evolution to expect disaster and prepare for the worst possible outcomes. We don't just adapt to challenges, we actively look for them. Marcus studied the information with growing understanding. That's why the Confederation thinks we're unpredictable. They've never encountered a species that treats crisis as normal. Exactly, Alex replied. Their idea of evolution is slow, steady improvement in stable conditions. Our idea of evolution is rapid adaptation under pressure. We're not just different from them, we're operating on completely different principles. The implications were enormous. While the galaxy had spent thousands of years perfecting technologies and social systems based on stability, humans had developed an entire civilization around the assumption that everything could go wrong at any moment. This understanding became critical when Lieutenant Mike Ross returned from his latest reconnaissance mission into Devour and controlled territory. His report painted a picture that terrified the Confederation, but somehow energized the human leadership. The machines are learning faster than anyone expected, Mike reported to the assembled group. They've adapted to every tactic the Confederation has tried. Standard battle formations, siege weapons, even the new energy shields the Nereid developed. Nothing works more than once. What about our irregular tactics? Lisa asked. Mike's expression was grim, but determined. That's the interesting part. They're still struggling to counter unpredictable attacks, but they're starting to develop countermeasures. We estimate we have maybe 6 months before they figure out how to neutralize our advantages too. Dr. Emma Torres had been working with Confederation scientists to analyze captured Devourer technology. Her findings added another layer to their growing understanding of the crisis. These machines were designed by a species that thought like the current Confederation, Emma explained. Logical, methodical, predictable. Their programming assumes that all intelligent life will behave according to rational principles. But humans don't always behave rationally, Tom Blake observed with a slight grin. That's our secret weapon, Emma agreed. We make decisions that work despite violating logic. We take risks that no sensible species would consider. We fight battles we can't win, and somehow find ways to win them anyway. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Ambassador Thielen. The aquatic alien appeared on their main screen looking more distressed than any human had ever seen him. Captain Reed, we need your assistance immediately, Thielen said without his usual diplomatic formalities. A joint Confederation task force has become trapped in the Vega system. Standard rescue operations have failed, and the Devourers are closing in. Marcus felt his tactical instincts engage. What kind of trap? The machines have created a containment field around our ships using some kind of quantum manipulation. Our vessels are intact, but unable to move or fire weapons. We estimate 12 hours before Devourer processing units arrive to consume everything. Lisa was already pulling up tactical displays. How many ships are trapped? 47 vessels representing 15 different species, including over 12,000 personnel, Thielen replied. Captain, I know the Confederation has not always appreciated human methods, but you are our only hope. The request represented a complete reversal of the power dynamic that had existed since first contact. The advanced galactic civilization was asking the primitive humans for help because their sophisticated solutions had failed. Marcus made his decision quickly. We'll need complete tactical authority and permission to use any methods we deem necessary. Thielen's tentacles swayed, with what looked like resignation. Granted, the Confederation Council has authorized you to take whatever actions you believe will save our people. Within hours, a human task force was heading toward the Vega system at maximum speed. The rescue mission included the remaining human ships, plus a mixed crew of volunteers from various Confederation species who were willing to try unconventional tactics. When they arrived at Vega, the situation was even worse than described. The trapped ships hung motionless in space, surrounded by a shimmering energy field that seemed to bend reality itself. Devourer scout units were already positioning themselves around the perimeter, preparing for the final assault. Conventional. Wisdom says this is impossible, Mike Ross reported from his scanner station. The containment field is using technology we don't understand, powered by energy sources we can't detect. Then we ignore conventional wisdom, Marcus replied. Tom, what's your analysis of the field itself? Tom had been studying the energy patterns with his usual methodical approach. It's definitely advanced beyond anything we've seen, but it has one interesting characteristic. The field seems to respond to organized, predictable inputs by strengthening itself. What happens if we hit it with something completely random? Lisa asked. Unknown, but that's exactly what makes it worth trying, Tom answered. The rescue plan that emerged was typical of human problem-solving. Simple, dangerous, and completely illogical by galactic standards. Instead of attempting to understand or counter the containment technology, they would overwhelm it with chaos. Every human ship began firing at the energy field using different weapons, different intervals, with no coordination whatsoever. Some crews fired continuously while others shot in random bursts. Several ships began ramming the field at various angles, while others tried to disrupt it with everything from communication signals to waste disposal systems. The trapped Confederation. Vessels watched in amazement as their rescuers deliberately created the most disorganized assault in military history. Energy weapons mixed with kinetic projectiles. Electronic warfare systems broadcast nonsense, while ships flew in patterns that violated every principle of space navigation. Slowly, incredibly, the containment field began to weaken. The alien technology that had easily contained organized fleets couldn't process the sheer randomness of human tactics. Like a computer trying to solve an equation with too many variables, the field's control systems began to overload. It's working, Mike announced with disbelief in his voice. The field strength is dropping across multiple sections. All trapped vessels, prepare for immediate evacuation. Marcus broadcast on all frequencies. You'll have maybe 10 minutes. Before the Devourers respond, the rescue was messy, chaotic, and successful. 47 Confederation ships escaped the Vega trap using tactics that made no logical sense but worked anyway. As the combined fleet retreated to safe space, Ambassador Thielen sent a message that would be remembered throughout galactic history. Captain Reed, on behalf of the Confederation, I must ask you a question that will sound strange coming from a species that has existed for millions of years. Thielen said, Would you be willing to teach us how to think like humans? The request marked the beginning of the galaxy's most fundamental transformation in over 3,000 years. Species that had perfected the art of civilization were about to learn the equally important art of barely controlled chaos. Marcus looked at his crew and saw the same realization in their eyes. Humanity wasn't just fighting to save the galaxy from the Devourers, they were fighting to save it from the limitations of its own success. The Devourer War reached its darkest hour when the machines deployed their ultimate weapon against the galaxy. Captain Marcus Reed stood in the command center of what was now called Joint Operations Station, watching in horror as reports flooded in from across Confederation space. The machines had released something they called a quantum virus, a form of digital infection that could corrupt any advanced technology it touched. The virus is spreading faster than we can contain it, reported Dr. Emma Torres, her voice tight. With worry, it's not just affecting computer systems anymore. Infection is turning entire technological infrastructures against their creators. The implications were devastating. Confederation worlds that had relied on automated systems for millennia suddenly found their own defenses attacking them. Planetary shields collapsed, space stations turned their weapons on friendly ships, and even basic life support systems began malfunctioning in ways that seemed almost deliberately cruel. Ambassador Thielen appeared on the main screen from what remained of Harmony's Edge. his usual composure completely shattered. Captain Reed, we are facing complete technological breakdown across 47 systems. Our most advanced worlds are becoming uninhabitable because their own machines are trying to kill everyone. Marcus felt the weight of the galaxy's survival pressing down on him. Humans had become the de facto military leaders of the Confederation, not through politics or conquest, but simply because they were the only ones whose tactics still worked against the Devourers. What about the worlds with simpler technology? Marcus asked. They're surviving better, Thielen admitted reluctantly. Agricultural planets and mining colonies with basic equipment are largely unaffected. It seems the virus targets sophisticated systems specifically. Chief Engineer Tom Blake had been working around the clock to understand the quantum virus with his team of human technicians. His findings were both terrifying and oddly encouraging. The virus is incredibly advanced, Tom explained to the assembled human leadership. It can corrupt any system above a certain complexity threshold. But here's the strange part. It seems completely baffled by primitive technology and jury-rigged solutions. Commander Lisa Park looked up from tactical displays that showed the spreading chaos? What do you mean? Tom pulled up examples from his analysis. Look at these reports from the agricultural worlds. They're using equipment that's decades old, held together with spare parts and improvised repairs. The virus can't figure out how to corrupt something that barely works in the first place. Dr. Alex Chen nodded thoughtfully. It's like trying to hack a system that doesn't follow proper programming logic. If the technology is chaotic enough, there's nothing for the virus to latch onto. The revelation sparked an idea that would have been unthinkable to any species other than humans. Instead of trying to develop more advanced defenses against the quantum virus, they would deliberately downgrade their technology to levels the virus couldn't process. You're suggesting we destroy our own infrastructure? Ambassador Thielen asked, when Marcus proposed the strategy during an emergency Confederation Council meeting. Not destroy, Marcus corrected. Simplify. Place automated systems with manual ones. Swap out advanced computers for basic processors, and create backup systems using primitive technology. The room filled with shocked silence. Representatives from dozens of species stared at Marcus as if he had suggested they return to living in caves. For civilizations that had spent thousands of years perfecting their technology, the idea of deliberately making it worse was almost incomprehensible. Captain Reed, you are asking us to abandon everything that makes us civilized, protested the golden-furred representative from the Altarian collective. Without our advanced systems, we would be no better than barbarians. Barbarians who are still alive, Lisa pointed out bluntly. Your advanced systems are killing you right now. The debate continued for hours, but eventually desperation won over pride. The first test of the infrastructure suppression strategy took place in the Centauri system, where a fleet of Confederation ships had been completely disabled by viral corruption. Colonel Sarah Martinez led the mission with a mixed force of human and alien volunteers. Their ships had been hastily modified with the most primitive technology available: manual controls, analog computers, and backup systems that would have been considered obsolete centuries ago. Remember, if anything electronic starts acting strange, switch to manual immediately, Sarah broadcast to her fleet as they approached the infected zone. We're not trying to be sophisticated here. We're trying to survive. The results were immediate and dramatic. Ships that had been completely dead suddenly came back to life when their crews bypassed corrupted systems with manual overrides. Weapons that had refused to fire worked perfectly when controlled by simple mechanical triggers. Navigation systems that had been sending ships into stars began working normally when pilots switched to basic visual reference. It's actually working, reported Lieutenant Mike Ross from his position aboard one of the hybrid vessels. The virus keeps trying to corrupt our systems, but there's nothing complex enough for it to affect. The success at Centauri proved the concept, but implementing it across the entire galaxy required a level of cooperation that the Confederation had never achieved before. Worlds that had barely spoken to each other for centuries suddenly found themselves working together to strip down their civilizations to survivable levels. Tom Blake found himself teaching alien engineers how to build systems that were designed to fail gracefully. The key is redundancy, he explained to a group of crystalline beings whose entire technology was based on perfect precision. If one system breaks, you need 3 backup systems that work completely differently. The process was painful for species that took pride in technological perfection. Dr. Torres watched as some of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations deliberately sabotaged their own achievements to stay ahead of the quantum virus. They're not just changing their technology, Emma observed to Marcus during one of their strategy sessions. They're changing their entire philosophy about how civilization should work. The transformation was most visible in the military sphere. Confederation forces that had once moved with clockwork precision now operated with organized chaos that reminded Marcus of human tactics. Mixed fleets combined advanced vessels with primitive support ships, creating formations that looked random, but proved surprisingly effective. Your influence is spreading, Ambassador Thielen told Marcus during a private communication. Species that have followed the same patterns for millennia are suddenly experimenting with uncertainty. Is that good or bad? Marcus asked. The Thielen's tentacles swayed, and what Marcus had learned was deep contemplation. I do not know, and perhaps that uncertainty is exactly what we needed. We had become so focused on perfection that we forgot how to adapt. The real test came when Devourer forces launched a massive assault on the core systems. Expecting to find the same technologically dependent civilizations they had been fighting, instead, they encountered something unprecedented. A galaxy that had learned to fight dirty. Ships with primitive targeting systems. Fired weapons that worked despite violating every principle of advanced engineering. Fleets used communication. Methods so basic that the Devourer's interception systems couldn't process them. Ground forces abandoned their sophisticated equipment for simple tools that couldn't be corrupted, but turned against them. The battle reports coming back from the front lines told a story that would have seemed impossible just months before. Confederation. Forces were not just surviving against the Devourers. They were actually winning through sheer unpredictability. The machines are struggling to adapt, reported Colonel Martinez from the front lines. Every time they develop a counter to our tactics, we change to something even more primitive. It's like fighting an enemy that keeps getting simpler instead of more complex. Marcus stood in the command center watching tactical displays that showed the tide of war slowly turning. The galaxy was transforming itself, abandoning the pursuit of perfection in favor of survival through chaos. We're not the same species we were a year ago, Dr. Chen observed. Looking at psychological profiles of Confederation personnel, contact with humanity has changed how an entire galaxy thinks about technology, warfare, and civilization itself. Quantum virus still raged across hundreds of worlds, and the Devourers continued their relentless advance, but something fundamental had shifted. The galaxy was no longer fighting to preserve its old way of life. It was fighting to discover what kind of civilization could emerge from the marriage of ancient wisdom and human adaptability. The final battle was still ahead. The outcome was no longer predetermined. The machines had been designed to defeat a predictable galaxy, but they had never encountered a galaxy that was learning to be unpredictable. The final battle for the galaxy began at the most unlikely place imaginable, the galactic core, where the Devourers had constructed a processing facility so massive it defied comprehension. Captain Marcus Reed stood on the bridge of the new Perseverance, watching long-range sensors display the enemy's ultimate creation. The machines had built a structure around the central black hole itself, preparing to consume the gravitational anchor that held the entire galaxy together. "How is that even possible?" whispered Communications Officer David White. Staring at the tactical display in disbelief, Dr. Emma Torres had been analyzing the readings for hours, trying to understand what they were seeing. They're using the black hole's energy to power something beyond our current physics. If they succeed in destabilizing it, the gravitational effects could tear apart every star system in the galaxy. Admiral David White, recently promoted to command the Joint Galactic Fleet, studied the formation of ships around them with mixed feelings. The assembled armada was unlike anything in recorded history. Primitive human vessels, flying alongside ancient Confederation dreadnoughts, all stripped of their most advanced systems to avoid quantum virus corruption. "Final fleet count," Admiral White called out. 12,000 vessels, representing every known species in the galaxy, reported Colonel Sarah Martinez from her position as tactical coordinator. It's the largest military force ever assembled, but also the most chaotic. The chaos had become their greatest strength. Over the past months, alien crews had learned to think like humans, abandoning their careful protocols in favor of adaptive improvisation. The result was a military force that operated on principles the Devourers had never encountered. Ambassador Thielen appeared on the main communication screen, broadcasting from the bridge of a Nereid vessel that looked nothing like its original design. The elegant alien ship had been retrofitted with human-style backup systems, emergency patches, and redundant controls that violated every aesthetic principle his species valued. "All fleet commanders, this is our final opportunity," Thielen announced. "The Devourers have concentrated their entire force around the Galactic Core facility. If we fail here, there will be nowhere left to retreat." Marcus felt the weight of history pressing down on him. Humanity had gone from being the galaxy's newest and least important species to leading its last desperate fight for survival. The irony wasn't lost on him that the primitive tactics his people had been criticized for were now the only hope for galactic civilization. "Begin the approach," Admiral White ordered, and 12,000 ships started their final journey toward the center of the galaxy. The Devourer defenses were more sophisticated than anything they had faced before. Energy weapons that could vaporize entire planets fired in perfect coordination, while swarms of smaller machines moved to intercept the incoming fleet. But something was different about this battle from the moment it began. The Galactic Fleet didn't advance in formation. Ships attacked from every direction at different speeds, using weapons that ranged from the most advanced energy cannons to simple kinetic projectiles. Some vessels deliberately broke off from the main assault to create diversions, while others rammed enemy positions with reckless abandon. "The machines are struggling to process our attack patterns," reported Lieutenant Mike Ross from his scanner station. "Their defensive systems keep trying to identify command structures and predict our next moves." "That's because we don't have command structures," laughed Chief Engineer Tom Blake from the engineering deck. "Half our fleet is making up tactics as they go along." The battle evolved into something that resembled controlled chaos more than military strategy. Human commanders had taught their alien allies to embrace uncertainty, to make decisions that didn't follow logical patterns, and to adapt their tactics faster than any enemy could counter them. As the fleet pushed deeper into Devourer territory, the true scale of the enemy's final facility became apparent. The processing structure stretched across millions of kilometers, its mechanical tendrils reaching into the black hole's event horizon to extract energy from the very fabric of space-time. "We need to hit the central control nexus," Dr. Alex Chen announced after analyzing the facility's structure. "It's located at the most heavily defended point, right at the edge of the black hole's gravity well." "That's a suicide mission," Colonel Martinez observed grimly. "Any ship that gets that close to the black hole won't be able to escape the gravitational pull." Marcus looked around at his bridge crew and saw the same determination in their eyes. That had carried humanity through every impossible challenge in their species' history. Then we make it count. The final assault required a level of coordination that seemed to contradict everything they had learned about chaotic tactics. But this wasn't really coordination in the traditional sense. It was 12,000 different crews all improvising toward the same impossible goal. Ships began sacrificing themselves in ways that made no tactical sense but somehow created opportunities for others. Alien captains, who had spent their entire careers following careful protocols, suddenly found themselves making split-second decisions based on nothing but instinct and desperation. The new Perseverance led a group of volunteer vessels on the final run toward the control nexus. As they approached the black hole's gravity well, space itself began to distort around them. The laws of physics became suggestions rather than rules, and only the most primitive navigation systems continued to function. "We're past the point of no return," Tom reported, as gravitational forces began tearing at the ship's hull. "Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now." Marcus made a decision that would have horrified every military academy in the galaxy. Instead of trying to target the control nexus with precision weapons, He ordered every remaining ship to fire everything they had in the general direction of the facility's core. The result was a barrage of weapons, debris, and improvised explosives that hit the Devourer facility like a cosmic hurricane. Energy beams mixed with ancient projectile weapons, while ships deliberately overloaded their power systems to create massive explosions. But the real breakthrough came from something completely unexpected. Dr. Chen had been monitoring the quantum virus that still infected many of the galaxy's systems, and he noticed something strange happening as they approached the black hole. "The gravitational distortion is affecting the virus," he announced with growing excitement. "The intense space-time curvature is scrambling its quantum signatures. Can we use that?" Marcus asked. "Better than that," Chen replied. "I think we can turn it around. If we deliberately introduce corrupted systems near the control nexus, the gravitational field might cause the virus to spread backward into the Devourer network." It was the most ridiculous plan in a war full of ridiculous plans. Defeat an army of machines by infecting them with the same virus they had used against the galaxy? Tom's engineering team quickly rigged several of their most corrupted systems to broadcast directly into the Devourer facility's communication networks. The effect was immediate and devastating. The quantum virus, twisted by gravitational forces into something even more chaotic than before, began spreading through the Devourer collective faster than their systems could adapt. Machines that had operated with perfect precision for millennia suddenly found themselves making random decisions and contradictory choices. The control nexus that had been coordinating the galactic core facility began issuing conflicting orders. Some Devourers tried to continue their mission while others attempted to defend against threats that didn't exist. The careful logic that had made them so dangerous became their greatest weakness when infected with pure chaos. "The facility is destabilizing," reported Mike, as massive explosions began tearing through the Devourer structure. "Whatever we did, it's spreading through their entire network." The destruction of the galactic core facility marked the end of the Devourer threat, but it also represented something far more significant. As the surviving ships began the long journey back to inhabited space, the galaxy itself had been fundamentally changed. Species that had maintained the same social structures for thousands of years were experimenting with new forms of government based on human concepts of controlled chaos. Worlds that had perfected their technologies were deliberately introducing randomness and uncertainty into their systems. Ambassador Thyland's final report to the Reformed Galactic Council captured the magnitude of the transformation. "We spent 3,000 years building a perfect civilization based on order, predictability, and rational behavior. Humanity taught us that perfection is the enemy of survival. We weren't ready for Earth's evolution, but perhaps that's exactly what we needed." Marcus stood on the observation deck of Darwin Station, the new headquarters for galactic cooperation, watching as ships from hundreds of worlds conducted joint training exercises. The maneuvers looked chaotic to anyone familiar with traditional military doctrine, but they represented something unprecedented, a galaxy that had learned to thrive on uncertainty. Children from dozens of species played together in the station's recreational areas, inventing games that would have seemed impossible before humanity's arrival. They competed and cooperated in ways that reflected the new galactic culture, one that valued adaptability over stability and innovation over perfection. As the first generation of post-contact children reached maturity, one thing became clear. The galaxy wasn't just ready for Earth's evolution anymore. It was eager to evolve. Alongside it, the machines had been defeated not by superior technology or ancient wisdom, but by the simple recognition that sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem is to stop thinking about it as impossible. The galaxy had discovered what humanity had always known: survival isn't about being perfect, it's about being willing to change.